So today's drone news has two big themes: national security pressure and what that pressure does to the gear that you can actually buy and fly. Then we got a major GoPro camera launch that could shake up the tiny cinema space, so let's jump in. The DJI situation in the US just got a bit more complicated, and it's not because of a new lawsuit or a new product. It's because the Pentagon just drew a harder line in the sand. As Drone DJ is laying out, the Department of Defense has formally opposed any effort to reconsider the FCC decision to put foreign-made. As Drone DJ lays out, the Department of Defense has formally opposed any effort to reconsider FCC decisions that put foreign-made drone systems and critical components on the FCC covered list. Now, that list blocks new product approvals. The practical effect is simple, and it's brutal. If a drone cannot get FCC equipment authorization, then that drone cannot legally be marketed or imported into the United States. And the Pentagon memo does not treat this like a paperwork issue. It treats it like a national security boundary. The government's determination, formalized in late 2025, says that foreign-built drones pose unacceptable risks to national security and public safety. The new memo reinforces that position, and it pushes back directly on the idea that the FCC should soften or revisit the covered list decision. The big escalation in the memo is the evidence basis. The Pentagon says that the determination relied on both classified and unclassified intelligence. It also says that there is a classified annex and that was submitted to Congress on April 3rd. That detail kind of changes some of the debate because it signals that the government is leaning on information that it can't fully share with the public. So even if DJI or other companies want to argue that the risk is hypothetical, there's additional details that we don't have. The memo applies broadly across the drone world. It covers consumer drones and enterprise systems, even though it doesn't name DJI directly. In real-world terms, this touches everything from small consumer models that creators buy with their own money all the way up to larger platforms used by public safety agencies and infrastructure operators. There's also an important nuance. The US has allowed limited exemptions for certain foreign-made drones and components after cybersecurity and supply chain reviews. But those exemptions have not gone to Chinese manufacturers, and many of them are temporary, with end dates in late 2026 or early 2027. So the US is not treating every foreign drone the same, but it clearly is drawing a line around which systems it's going to trust. The immediate takeaway is that this memo strengthens the FCC's position at a moment when the industry is looking for any sign of reversal. It also makes the path harder for DJI in court because judges often defer to national security agencies, especially when classified material is part of the record. So yes, existing drones will keep flying, and nobody is grounding your current aircraft with this memo. But the pipeline of what comes next and who will get to sell it in the United States looks even more tied to national security decisions and with information that the public can't fully see. But speaking of the gear and drones that we fly, I get a lot of questions about gear, so I keep a full list down below. It covers the cameras, lenses, audio, and accessories that I actually use. It's not just a wish list. Now, those are affiliate links, meaning that the channel does earn a small commission, but it's no extra cost to you. So if you're curious about what I'm shooting with, or you want to dig into my setup, that's the easiest place to find everything in one spot. Now, if you're hoping that an American company will swoop in and replace DJI in the consumer market, the latest signals point the other way. The market is not filling the gap, it's shifting away. Now, as Drone XL is summarizing from a broader industry report, the US drone companies are leaning hard into defense contracts. Skydio has confirmed that it will not return to the consumer drone market. The business logic it's not subtle. If a company can sell high-dollar systems into government and defensive channels, it has less incentive to build a $500 consumer drone with thinner margins and higher support demands. You can see the squeeze in the examples. Anti-Gravity's A1 has shown strong early sales and ships as an 8K 360 drone camera, but it's still a Chinese company, and that means that it can run into the same supply chain constraints and FCC approval problems going forward. The Hover Air Aqua, which some people watched as a potential alternative, reportedly failed to get FCC certification before the December ban, which effectively stops new authorizations for foreign-made drones under the current framework. This is also where the timeline gets a little tricky for public safety and volunteer groups. A lot of smaller departments cannot afford $10,000 enterprise systems. They often rely on affordable consumer units. And the bigger pinch may not even hit today because existing inventory and existing models are still out there. The pinch is going to show up later when these models age out, support ends, and there's no easy replacement for the same price point. Now, shifting to the FCC side of this, the Commission has opened public comments on drone spectrum reforms. The FCC is asking what needs to change to help US lead on drones, and the spectrum access sits right in the middle of that. Most drones operate in the let's try that again. Most drones operate in the unlicensed 2.4 and 5.8 gigahertz bands, which are the same crowded frequencies that home Wi-Fi uses. The FCC is asking whether the industry should move drones and drone command and control into licensed spectrum, including the 5030 and 5091 megahertz range. It also notes that previously allocated 10 megahertz block from 1040 to 1050 has largely sat unused. The FCC wants input on speeding up experimental licensing, and it's asking about counter-UAS rules. Current law, including Section 333 of the Communications Act, prohibits willful interference with radio communications. So that creates a direct barrier for counter-drone systems that rely on jamming. Now, comments are due by May 1st, and the timing isn't random, right? The industry is trying to figure out what the operating environment is going to look like before temporary exemptions start expiring in 2027. And then you have the story out of Oregon, who's stepping in with a very specific request. Oregon wants real terrain drone test corridors, not just flat, uncontrolled test environments. The state has pointed to 3 areas: one in the Cascades near Oak Ridge, another along the Columbia River, and a third in southeast Oregon. Oregon's argument is that the mountain passes, line of sight limitations, and unpredictable weather are conditions that actually stress safety-critical drone operations, like emergency response and delivery. Oregon also supports moving the command and control links towards licensed spectrum because safety-critical operations don't pair well with crowded, unlicensed, publicly available bands. And that's why they're asking for simpler waiver processes for trusted deployment for foreign drones during the transition period. So the consumer replacement problem and the spectrum reform conversation are connected. If the US wants more domestic drone capability, it needs companies that can build and sell at scale. It also needs a radio environment that fits reliable operations beyond the hobby level. Now, switching gears really quick, GoPro has made a move that sounds like it's going to belong in the cinema camera world, not just the action camera aisle. And the most interesting part isn't just the resolution, it's the sensor and the mount. Now, Photo Rumors is reporting on this and a number of other sites. GoPro has unveiled their Mission 1 series. GoPro is positioning these as extremely small, lightweight cinema cameras that can shoot 8K and open gate video with a new 50 megapixel 1-inch sensor and a new GP3 processor that we've talked about on the channel before. GoPro says that this new imaging pipeline is going to target better low-light performance, better dynamic range, and it says the sensor can deliver up to 14 stops of that range. GoPro's also splitting the lineup in a way that we haven't seen from them before. The Mission 1 Pro is the flagship. GoPro says it can shoot 8K at 60 frames per second and 4K at 240 frames per second. It also supports, again, open capture, 8K 30, 4K 120 in a full sensor style mode that gives you more room to reframe for different aspect ratios. Then there's the Mission 1 Pro ILS. This one will make a lot of people stop and look. GoPro says this model uses the same 1-inch sensor, the 50 megapixel sensor from the Mission 1 and the GP3 processor, but it adds an interchangeable lens system that supports micro four thirds lenses. So in other words, GoPro is offering a tiny camera body that can take a wide range of existing lenses and adapters instead of locking you into a fixed lens. Then there's the base Mission 1. So you have the Pro and the Pro ILS, right? Still got the same sensor, same processor, but it tops out at lower video specs than the Pro model. Still supports OpenGate at 4K 120, and it still has that 50 megapixel photo capture. If you want the practical meaning of these numbers, it comes down to flexibility and motion. OpenGate capture gives you more room in post for reframing and multi-platform delivery, and the high frame rate options like 4K 240 are aimed at clean slow-mo without dropping into lower resolutions. They've also announced a broader accessory push alongside these cameras. It includes a new wireless mic system, a redesigned media mod with an expanded I/O package, including multiple 3.5mm ports and a micro HDMI output. I'm sure that those will never break. Plus a higher capacity Enduro 2 battery and new grips and power options. Shipping is expected at the end of May. The big question here is where it's going to land in terms of workflows. GoPro is clearly reaching beyond action sports into compact cinema and creator setups. If the image quality and thermal performance hold up the way GoPro describes, this could be a serious option for small rigs, crash cams, and multi-camera shoots. I'm going to do a separate video specifically talking about the ILS version of this camera, so stay subscribed for that. Next, Skyrover wants buyers to believe that it has long-term future here in the United States, but the company says that it has a credibility problem and that a roadmap alone does not solve it. Now, DroneXL is reporting here that Skyrover has posted a "We're here to stay" message to its official Reddit community, laying out a 5-year roadmap that promises FCC compliance, a US-based customer support system, and fast replacement support, and an effort to explore US-based manufacturing and localized supply chains. The timing is easy to understand because the FCC decision in late 2025 blocked new equipment authorizations for foreign-made drones and critical components, which cut off the normal path for Chinese manufacturers. Skyrover's message hits the points that you'd expect for a brand in this moment. It says that it will support US customers. It's going to focus on compliance, and it's going to look at more US-aligned supply chain opportunities. But the tension here is that prior security research points out that DJI-linked technology exists in Skyrover's ecosystem. Skyrover's statement doesn't really address that. The reporting points to app code that references the FlySafe infrastructure and other DJI-related endpoints. It also points to research describing DJI's OcuSync frequency signatures and chipset identifiers that can show up in FCC-related records. The key point there is that hardware-level identifiers don't change just because a product gets rebranded. Now, under the current FCC framework, this isn't just about whether or not current models can keep selling. It's about whether future models can get authorized at all. Existing products that are cleared before the cutoff can remain legal to sell and operate, but the wall hits new products, as well as critical components, like those chipsets. Now, Skyrover can promise a 5-year innovation roadmap, but the bottleneck is still FCC authorization for whatever they come out with. So far, the conditional approval pathway has favored non-Chinese manufacturers. So the idea of an exemption is uncertain. Skyrover doesn't disclose its manufacturing relationships or its supply chain. It doesn't explain what happens in its software when the back end is DJI based if the US position tightens further. That leaves buyers and agencies with a basic question that doesn't have a public answer. How independent is the platform really? So Skyrover's message is going to reassure some owners who already like the drones that they have, but the bigger test is whether or not Skyrover can clear the next regulatory gate for new hardware and whether it can actually do it with enough transparency to satisfy a market that's turned deeply skeptical of rebranding strategies. Now, if you want to see how I work outside the studio, real shoots, real light, decisions in the moment, I share that work on Instagram. Now, if you want behind the scenes clips, finished shots, quick breakdowns that don't always make it into my longer videos, it's the most current look at what I'm shooting now and how I'm working day to day. I've got a link down in the description. Lastly, the FCC has just signaled something important for foreign drone systems. Even as the overall rules keep tightening, the agency is still willing to make exceptions, but only through a narrow gate. Now, Drone Life is reporting that the FCC has granted conditional approval to the Seize AI USA 1.0 uncrewed aircraft system. That approval exempts it from the covered list restrictions through December 31st of this year. And the FCC is framing this as an approval that this specific system doesn't pose an unacceptable national security risk, which allows it to be excluded from the covered list during the approval window. Now, Seize.ai, I'm gonna have a hard time saying this, is a UK-based company, and it focuses on autonomous drone operations for infrastructure inspection. The company describes its offering as a fully integrated autonomous inspection platform with centralized control of multiple missions. It also says that it owns the full technology stack, from the drone and flight systems through the data capture. At the same time, the public details are limited. The FCC filing itself includes only basic information, the system name, and the fact that the approval is conditional and that there's an expiration date. There isn't much to go on beyond what we have here. So we don't know whether or not it's a commercial product or a specific configuration or where the system is manufactured or assembled. But the bigger signal is that there is a policy direction happening here. The US is restricting foreign produced UAS broadly, but it's also creating a case-by-case exemption pathway for systems that can meet security requirements. For international companies that sell integrated platforms, this could become a practical route to keep operating in the US, at least in the near term. Now, this Seize.ai approval does not tell exactly what the FCC's checklist looks like yet because the public record stays thin. It does show that the door is not fully closed. And it also shows that the door has a timer on it, which might be the end of 2026. Now, that's gonna be it for me today. If you wanna support what I'm doing here, I've got memberships, super chats, and gifts available. All my links are down below. Follow me everywhere that I am. I've also got links to all the gear that I talk about and use here on the channel. As always, the easiest way to support the channel is to like, subscribe, and share. Those are always free, and they go a long way to helping me here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.